tape. I moved it because it was on my
Well,
chair.
I want to ask our engineer
Good
what he
reflexes.
recommends. Good evening. It's 6:30 on Tuesday, January 26th. So I'd like to call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order. We having a quorum. Counselor Lisi did excuse herself tonight. Something came up at home. So motion to,
Make a motion, we begin the meeting?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Our engineer is expected shortly, but given that he's not here, I would accept a motion to go out of order, perhaps on item 7.
Okay, make a motion to suspend the rules to now proceed to item 7 regarding Leary Drive.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to take up item 7.
Gonna read it.
Item 7, filed by Counselor Jourdain, ordered that the relevant sections of Chapter 86 of the Code of Ordinances be amended to allow the Holyoke Housing Authority to issue permits for parking on Leary Drive and to authorize the Housing Authority to tow vehicles parked without permits. Further, that the listing of spaces on Leary Drive be reviewed and amended as necessary to update the location of the permit parking spaces and visitor spaces.
Now, we have some guests. Priscilla Chesky, who's legal counsel for the Housing Authority, and we also have Matt Mainville with us, who's the executive director. So if you would like to come in. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
First come, first serve. Sure, you,
Yeah, just have a seat there, unless you have a handout for us or anything. Okay. Oh,
all
okay.
right,
Yeah, sure, you want to show us? Yeah.
okay. Please do be sure that you're speaking into a mic if you're going over something with us for the people at home that might be watching.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So just to give you a point of reference, I wanted to just bring a kind of a locust map of Bowden Village. To give you a layout, this is Cherry Street, Leary Drive, which is what we're in front of the committee this afternoon to talk about. These offshoots, Elting, York, and Barrett, are Housing Authority-owned property, and Little Ave are all Housing Authority-owned property, and we currently have a towing policy, permit parking for those. Unfortunately, we do not have control, as this is a city street of Leary, so we're unable to do towing here. So with Councilor Jourdain's efforts, we heard from residents that a permit parking process was important. We have fewer parking spaces than we have units. We have 217 units up here. We have 258 parking spaces. Many folks now, this was constructed back in the 50s when one car per household was common, and actually some folks didn't even have cars. Now we have a situation where we have households that have 2 or more cars. So there was a lot of conflict over the limited number of parking spaces that we did have. So we're asking to, like I said, have control to allow us to do towing on Leary Drive. We have met with the chief and with the city solicitor, received their feedback, and they're both on board with this. The Housing Authority, in order to alleviate some of the limited amount of parking spaces here and help with demand, is in the process of designing a parking lot here that will have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20, I think I brought a map. Yeah. And here's the map of Ty and Bond was nice enough to do this. We're in the process of having them put out the meets and bounds, because this is the park, this backspace here. So there are some wetlands, so we're in the process of having that delineated so that we can get an appropriate building permit, et cetera, et cetera. We're anticipating that this should happen sometime in 2016. We're hoping to move it sooner rather than later. And that's kind of the story.
And those would probably be visitor spaces, although there might be resident spaces mixed in.
Yeah.
The way the ordinance reads, and it's been a while since it's been updated, At the back of 86, I think it's under 86-9, or, yeah, 86-9, it lays out the streets, the locations of the streets and the sides of the streets, and then it goes from point to point, which is what Ty and Bond is doing now with the wheel. They're going point to point along Leary Drive. Some of the spaces in the current ordinance already do say permitted parking only. So I think at some point in time, over the history, there had been permit parking up on Leary Drive and on the circles. This isn't something new to the Housing Authority that they're doing now. But we are updating that wheel and would, via the wheel with time bond, and would provide those meets and bounds to the city engineer and to the law department through Attorney Cunha to put it into the legal form that you would need to adopt going forward. Just have it go over everything.
We don't have to worry about which ones might have been there.
And you can have that for next Tuesday, so we can theoretically approve this next week?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Because Ty and Bond actually did the field work yesterday.
And today.
And today, and they are writing up the detailed information to match the language
That's
that was
already here.
kind of in there as an illustration, so we should have that by tomorrow.
And handicap spots have changed along Leary Drive. The fire department has come up on several occasions and has changed some of the parking spaces so that they can turn their equipment and stuff into the circles and have access out of them. So the ordinance would have needed to have been updated anyway, even if we weren't doing this process, but I think it's a win-win both ways to update the ordinance and to do it this way for the permit parking. And then also, so that section would be updated, and then section 86-106, which revolves around permit parking, so we would be allowed to do that permit parking. And then section 86, 131 or 132, usually gives the police department the authority to tow, but that we would be asking that that piece be amended as well to authorize the housing authority to tow on Leary Drive. And I think we've talked about that with the chief of police as well as the law department, and they would be on board with that. Hampshire Towing now does the towing on the circles and does all the reporting to the police department regarding the towing and what's going on with the vehicles that they're towing in.
What was the first section that you referenced on the amendments?
86-9?
86-9?
Yep.
Okay. And in.
I can show you.
Oh, no, that's okay, that's okay. I'm good with the concept. But in terms of, Kara, what you would need to put this in legal form, are you going to need us to give you some specific language around this, or is just your understanding of what they're looking for enough for you to do that?
I assume, Priscilla, you'll prepare the draft
Yeah,
ordinance
between,
change.
yeah,
You can
between
give it to
Kara and
to
I
review.
can, yep, I can prepare the draft, or Kara and I can work on the draft together. And I think with respect to the meets and bounds piece, Time Bond's gonna give us the language that says, I'm not giving you the right page with Leary Drive, but it says Leary Drive from point northerly, point X feet. And so Ty and Bond will give us all of that. We will provide that information to the law department and the city engineer so they can sign off on it, make sure that it matches their requirements. And then with respect to the other sections, Kara and I can work on the language.
Okay.
For Tuesday's agenda. I did speak with Jan. That's probably the plan.
Right. Yep.
Track and then,
Yep.
so we'll try our best to get it for Tuesday.
Yep.
So the question I have,
Oh, right, because you're saying it has to go in our packets, the ordinance changes.
right,
Okay.
I mean, we can put the order on, I can't remember.
Yeah, if worse comes to worse, yeah.
so the question that I have relative to this ordinance change, and based on feedback from people living up there, is will this include numbering the spaces so that people will have identified numbered spaces up there?
This is the first step in allowing us to do that. As I indicated previously, we have 217 units and only 258 parking spaces. And unfortunately, those 258 spaces are not distributed equally throughout the site. Lower Leary, for example, has far more units than parking spaces. So it would be very difficult for us at this current time to assign a parking space per unit in that area. Once we have the parking lot, then this is our first step. The second step is to finish the parking lot, and then after that, we'll be able to move forward with giving each unit a step.
But it is your plan to do that? Because you'll see on our agenda, we're taking up a couple other orders because people are encroaching onto the other side streets. And it's becoming a bigger issue, so.
Well, right, and I think what happened was once the Housing Authority instituted the parking policy and the permits parking on the circle areas that they own, residents had to get their permits for their car. Their visitors, or if they had two cars, their visitors went and parked on other side streets, or they parked on Leary, or they tried to park on Cherry Street, or they parked in the old Grenier, which is now Holyoke Community College. They would park in that lot. So I think it has caused some issues for the neighbors, but we're hoping that this will solve it.
And it seems like it would be possible within a number of months, within this year that we're in anyway.
2016.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our inclination is, like I said,
Hopefully, maybe April or May for the parking lot, you think, maybe, or?
If no snow.
But even,
Summertime.
but even if you can use Leary, that alleviates a lot.
well, yeah, it's gonna be, yes. To be quite honest with you, this was a resident-driven effort to put in a parking permit process. Yeah, so it's, although it hasn't been without its bumps in the road, because we do have folks that have multiple cars with kids that are working in the school and et cetera. So, we will be putting in place, like I said, after we take this step, which will be very helpful, if it's moved by the subcommittee this evening, and then by the full city council, and then we get the parking lot in place, yeah, we should see alleviation of the issue.
So just so you know, what some of the folks are doing is they're probably saving their space for somebody else, and they're, with their permits, parking, they're going all the way over to Donley now, too. So this is a good plan, and it seems like a reasonable time frame, and should be a win-win.
And Matt, is it your anticipation that this would be visitor parking, or would you offer these spaces to the residents that are here right away?
This would be resident parking. To be quite honest with you, what I'm hoping to do is move up these units here. So the orientation you're looking at here is this, right? What I'm hoping to do is change the orientation, so this parking lot will be more along this kind of access.
Oh,
So
okay.
then all these
Almost more
folks
behind
here
these units.
More
would be able to pick up those
convenient.
spots, exactly.
Be right out their
And
back
then we're
door.
also gonna be putting in, we did apply for some CDBG.
Yeah,
funds.
I was gonna say, the CDBG application's in, so we wanna get you the new park. It's the intent, I know certainly of, myself and the mayor to approve for park funding.
Right, so in this area here, we'll have really a much more utilized space, and then we'll have a parking area well lit, all the ADUs.
It's gonna look really nice.
And then hopefully
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome, yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten a little informal here. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments?
I just have, one comment, one question.
Well,
Well, that's
I
fine.
just wanted to check in. Go ahead.
First of all, my comment is, thank you so much. I'm really so proud of you guys to be so proactive, and I really appreciate the great job the Housing Authority's doing on this. Is really fantastic, and so many people really appreciate your hard work and your efforts. This is great. I'm glad you guys are being right on it. The one friendly suggestion was, until the parking lot goes in, on that lower, particularly the lower half where it is so tight now, to be merciful on the towing. We passed this now, and that gives you guys carte blanche to really go to town towing and all of that. But the residents down at the beginning of Leary had said, can you please not do the towing until the parking lot goes in? Then after that, they don't mind tow away, for the violators. But for now, they're hoping that because it is so tight there right now, that you guys will use your discretion to be reasonable and not just start towing away on people, because you're sort of on the trapeze at the moment,
We try and make sure that we're considering enforcing new regulations. So there's typically a growing curve that we like to work with those folks that live with us and with the city council. So we appreciate your guidance, Councilor Jordan. It's been a good partnership so far, but we certainly will take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, thank you. So, can you just tell me, why do we need to waive police order tows? What's the rationale behind that, and how would the towing, who would do the towing and that sort of thing?
You can have your mics right at the desk there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it would just be, I think it would be more convenient for you than
Yeah, more comfortable.
standing over the mics. Just make sure the green light is on.
There's a button. Oh, there you go.
There we go. So, as we understand it, as we were instructed by the police chief and his traffic sergeant, is that there wouldn't be the capacity to tow on Leary as much as there would be to ticket. So I don't think that the police department has the capacity to tow, but would only have the capacity to ticket.
To ticket.
And in addition to that, what we did in order to get a towing company in place is we went out for bids. We did a solicitation, and I think, a year ago?
Yeah, it was over a year ago, yep.
We ended up with only, I think we only had one person reply, and that was Hampshire Towing. So we made sure that we provided the solicitation to all the towing companies in the city of Holyoke. We wanted to make sure we had open and fair process.
Including Reardon's.
Including Reds. All the towing companies were provided the solicitation, and we received back only one quote.
Okay. That's all you can do.
So Hampshire Towing currently is the towing company that does all of our developments.
Okay, so.
And as part of our conversation with the police chief and the city solicitor, it was their opinion that under the current ordinance, the police department would not tow, they would only ticket unpermitted cars that were parked along Leary Drive.
So I just want to ask the solicitor a question.
Motion to suspend.
Second.
All in favor?
All right. Yeah, so Kara,
Thanks, Kira.
so I heard, I'm not opposed to it, but I just want to get understanding. So we have a contract with vendors to tow on city streets for police order tows. And now we have a public way that is not subject to that contract, and we've said to Holyoke Housing Authority, I guess through your office, go ahead and put that out to bid for a public way. So I'm not understanding this. So are there, I mean, can I, if I wanted to, could I say to folks on Martin Street, can we get our own private towing company? Can I do that on Northampton Street, or is this just because it's?
So I think there's a couple issues. The first is that the housing authority, I believe, where Hampshire Towing would be towing are private ways that the housing authority
So
owns.
Leary's not a public way?
Well, that's where
Leary is
there's,
a public way, but Leary is the only
It's what we're
street
here to
that-
talk about this
right,
evening.
right. And so the second part of that is that by ordinance, and I just added to the list of the ones that Priscilla already listed, is that there's an ordinance section that lists what you can be towed for, and the permit parking would not be one of them. And so that's why we'll also need to update that to allow towing for a violation of the permit parking. And I think then kind of the third part of that was that the thought was that since the housing authority already has Hampshire Towing there in the vicinity, that they would just do the towing of those spaces as well, because essentially they're all going to be the permit parking.
So instead of it being.
Okay, yeah, come on, come on.
Go ahead.
Can I just?
Counselor Bartley has the floor.
Thank you. This is, okay, so, but just so clear, this Leary is still, it's a public way.
Right.
That's a true statement.
Yes.
And what we're saying by this is, we can, in this, for city council, we can allow private tows on a public way. Is that true?
Well, I think
Well, yeah, I'm just not clear, because it still sounds to me like Leary's a public way.
it is, and certainly once the permit parking is there, the police would have the authority to do it. I think the housing authority, which is obviously a public entity, is trying to be a good partner to address
No, I
the
get it, but
neighbors'
back to my,
concerns.
so what makes it any different from any other public way in the city to say that we can have a private tow on another public way? So, I mean, you frowned, so let me.
I'm just trying to think of,
Well,
I mean, if you want me to say
a
the
cul-de-sac,
police-
so a cul-de-sac, any cul-de-sac in the city, now, they don't like the fact, they don't like Hampshire towing, but so they're gonna come to me, let's just to say cul-de-sac ABC in Ward 3. They're come to, well, we allowed a private contract to happen on a public way in Ward 5 or Ward 6. Why can't we do it in Ward 3? What allows us to do that? I mean, what legal right do we have to?
Well, the police, I mean, the police chief has the authority, it's the police or his designee. I guess I don't want to speak for the police as far as their capacity. I think we were all trying to work together to resolve what sounds like a neighborhood situation, with another public entity. I see your point. I don't.
I guess I would need to have firmer legal ground than the police, than the chief of police saying, go ahead and do it. Because I don't think that cuts it, in my opinion.
I can certainly provide you with that if that's.
Can I just interject? I don't want to take away from Kara's position. I think the issue is that, yes, Leary Drive is a public way. The housing authority is asking its residents that park on Leary Drive to have parking permits, which they're allowed to do. So that puts the housing authority into this permitted parking ordinance. If there is a violation of that permitted parking ordinance, the way it stands now, the police chief or the city can only ticket those cars that are parked in permit parking only spaces. So I certainly respect your opinion. It's a little different from all the other city streets, because I don't think the other public streets have permit parking. I think there are some that do, but I think the majority of them don't. The housing authority went out to bid for towing because they own multiple properties within the city, and they went to permit parking on all of their properties, all of their developments, which have private parking lots. And so Hampshire Towing has been working with the Housing Authority on patrolling and enforcing the permitted parking for all of the rest of their properties for the past 6 months or a year, give or take. They rolled it out to each development, each piece of property over the course of time. And Leary Drive at Bowden Village is the only spot at the moment where it's still a private way or a public way. We can do permit parking on it. The current ordinance already gives us the opportunity to do permit parking on it, but it is
Counselor, if I
only
may,
for ticketing and not.
I think you're on point with everything. I have no problem with permanent parking up there because of the unique situation. I believe there's permit parking in South Holyoke. Not positive what streets, but I know Councilor LeBron Martinez has discussed that at times. I don't think anyone's answered my question, which is very narrow, having to do specifically with police order tolls on a public way. I don't think you can privately solicit for that, barring any other a legal opinion or some grounding in law that allows us to do that, to subvert a contract, I don't see how we can legally approve that.
Can I
Now,
take a crack at the answer?
So that's,
So
now,
we can,
Counselor,
happy to
I guess,
provide.
are we having a
I just don't
roundtable?
have that on.
Because if this is a roundtable, we'll
you
just
asked
go-
questions, so I'm posing answers.
No, but please, let's keep order.
I mean,
What's-
so I'm.
What is the
I'm-
order
I'm
here?
relying on
Asking
the
questions.
city solicitor. So if there's something that we can ground it in, fine. I'm ready to prove it.
We have the
But
next
I haven't heard it yet. Thank you.
Can I get on the list to speak?
In a minute, yes, you may.
If I would have to follow, I don't have, obviously, all the statutes right in front of me, but I'm happy to provide.
Well, and the question that I would ask is, we just recently approved permit parking for people in the apartments near the senior center. So my understanding of that, and I don't know if I'm not on point to your question, you can correct me, wasn't that it prohibited the police from then towing if it was in their jurisdiction? Is your concern that we're taking something away from the police authority?
Well, let me just address your question. So, I think the Housing Authority did a great job here. I think they've tried to cover every single aspect that they can humanly cover. With putting it out to bid, I support the permit thing. I want to alleviate the parking congestion there. I'm good to go with all of that. The narrow thing is, Madam Chair, is that somehow this got to the point where they were given the opinion by somebody, somebody in the city government, whether it's a solicitor's office or whether it's the chief of police, to say, well, we don't have the capacity to tow up there, so you, Holyoke Housing Authority, do a public bid under Chapter 30B and go find yourself a towing contractor. Well, it just happens to be they found the same towing contractor who's currently the vendor for the city of Holyoke. But my narrow point is, Leary is still a public way. And so what this action has done is to say, well, despite the fact that we have a towing contract with some sort of a rotation with vendors for the whole city, for all the other public ways, we can accept this one public way called Leary Drive, and we can have a private contractor on it. I don't think that's legal. At least I haven't heard anything that gives us grounding in law to allow that.
So before I go to Counselor Jordan, but if I
simple.
understand your point, would your point be then that in order to affect this change without interfering with that, be that Leary would have to be taken off as a public way and turned into a private way?
I would, well, I don't know if there's an appetite for that, but I would think that any towing on Leary would be subject to the contracts that we already have in place. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, it took us a long time to get to that. Finally, I think we're beginning to get to the end of the tunnel, and the illumination, I'll try to shed this. It's a good question, but the mechanics of it, I think, are a little bit more simple. Number one is, we have a towing contract for every public street. So we have a privatization, if you will, since we don't own publicly owned tow trucks. We already privatized the services to tow on all the public streets of Holyoke. So that we have a private vendor towing here is nothing different. I think what's somewhat unique here is that instead of the chief of police directly, or his agents, i.e. our officers, directly ordering tows of permitted parking, what we have here is that in this ordinance, because we've empowered the chief to make those specific directions, what we're doing in this ordinance is somewhat unique. We're saying that the housing authority will have that power to order the tow of people in the permitted parking. Hope that point's clear. That's what we're allowing by law. So therefore, the housing authority now has the authority normally vested with the police chief to order the tow in resident parking. The view there is that they're directly right there. They have a closer to the scene. Just general efficiency of government. The police chief feels that they will have more opportunity. They're there all the time, and it's not in the best efficiency of the police department to have people there constantly saying who should and should not be getting towed. Okay, so now that we get to the authority question, if we grant them this authority, that gives them the authority to then order the tow. Now the question is, who does the tow, right? Well, the police chief would order under the ordinary police tow contract, whoever the rotational vendor is of the week, okay, under the current law. That's already existing, goes on every day here in the city of Holyoke. Accidents, people parked illegally, somebody parks in front of a hydrant, maybe the police say, I'll give a ticket. Maybe they say, this guy did it 3 times, so as police, we're going to have it towed. Who do they call? Whoever happens to be on the rotation. Currently, it's Reds and it's Hampshire Towing, so one of the two is going to get it. Here, what would be somewhat a little bit unique off of that is this is going to be off-cycle to that contract. That may require an amendment to their agreement that the mayor may have to allow, because the normal rotation is 50% of the time you're going to be with Hampshire Towing for public streets, but the other half of the time technically is Reds. But maybe there's an agreement between the mayor, Reds, and Hampshire that for one street, Leary Drive, that it be always Hampshire Towing. I think there would have to be one simple, probably amendment to that current agreement. But other than that, I think this is fully within the confines of the current law. There's just 2 things going on here. Police, instead of the police directly ordering the tows, we, by ordinance, are deferring that discretion to the housing authority with the consent of the police, who have to initiate the initial ticket. Only the police can issue tickets. Housing authority does not have the authority to issue tickets. That will remain the current law. Number 2 is, instead of the rotational system of just flip a coin as to who happens to have it for that particular week, it's always going to be Hampshire on that street. I hope that helps fix the situation. There's really nothing out of bounds here.
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, and I appreciate the editorial comment at the start of that speech about getting into the tunnel. So now that we're back deeply in the tunnel, let me go back to my original comment, which wasn't answered right there. There was no answer. Again, so there's a rotation right now. Why not just keep the rotation as it is? Why have an exception? No one's explained the reason for any exception. Fine, let the Holyoke Housing Authority call up the chief of police or call up directly who was ever on rotation that week and tow the car. I don't see the reason to accept one street in the city of Holyoke for one contract without opening up a Pandora's box. Because, and the gentleman's made no rational argument to explain why that would make sense. To say we're accepting one street in the name of efficiency, how about muddying government? There's no reason for it. So I would say I'm good with all this, except just let the vendor contract that we have in place carry itself out to its term, and then if the mayor wants to have another way to do it, fine. But I would not accept this one street to have a Holyoke Housing Authority bid out for a tow contractor for one street. I don't think there's a basis for it, and no one to this point has provided one.
Are you
Good.
okay? So I have a question for the housing authority folks. Is there any reason why, once you deem somebody should be towed, even though you have your own contract, that you couldn't call the city under their contract for the tow? And then in that scenario, if the city said, we don't have somebody available to do the tow, you would be then within your bounds to affect the tow? Under suspension of the rules, would that be?
Maybe we just provide the housing authority, it's only 2 companies, it's every other week. We tell you who's on duty, and maybe instead of having the police as the intermediary, they can call whichever company is on duty directly, and so that saves. I'm happy to speak with the chief further and figure out.
But
it was just in the interest of
just to follow,
efficiency.
I doubt you care who tows.
and just to follow up on my question to you, you don't care who tows the car, right?
To be honest with you, there's only a couple caveats to it that, I understand and I respect Counselor Bartley's opinion here, and I agree with him. The only thing is I would hope, or I would ask, that we be able to contact the vendors directly as opposed to having to go through the police department.
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
that adds
Good.
kind of a wasted
We're
step.
good.
I'm good.
Consensus. Hey,
And I think the chief would be happy with that too, because I
taking
think that was.
turns.
Wonderful
It
place.
always works out well.
Government, isn't it wonderful?
Okay, so what I hear is we're all good on the amendments that we've heard in terms of the permitting and the use of Leary Drive, and we have clarified that we would continue to function under the contracts and the rotation of the contracts with the city, but that as a procedural matter, you would understand what those schedules are and call the appropriate vendor under the appropriate contract.
And if it makes the council any more comfortable, Madam Chair, we have no jurisdiction over who does the towing anyways. That's beyond the scope of the city council. We're not voting on who's gonna be doing towing.
Right,
So
but-
they have to figure that out between the police. All we're doing is allowing them to directly contact the vendor. But I agree, as Counselor Bartley correctly points out, we have two vendors, and that, under the normal contract, they're required to, right now, use whoever happens to be that week. So he's right. So unless they come up with some other agreement, but I agree, I don't see why you don't just use the normal agreement.
Good? Okay. Any other questions, any other comments?
Motion to approve is amended.
Second. with
All in
the-
favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
So moved.
Great.
Thank you for coming
Thank
down
you.
and explaining all of this.
Progress.
Progress. Business friendly. That's what we are.
Resident friendly.
Resident friendly, Ward 6 friendly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to take 38?
Yes,
Motion to take up 38.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I have that highlighted here. So we're going out of order for Counselor Valentin since it was number 38, and
Thank you.
here you are. Okay, so, item 38, filed by Counselor Valentin, that the registration fees for vacant buildings be reviewed to determine if an increase is warranted based on the numerous vacant properties throughout the city and the issues with non-compliance regarding Section 18-35 regulation of blighted and vacant buildings. Counselor Valentin?
Thank you, and thank you for taking the item out of order. I was hoping that would happen. So I filed this order summer of 2014, because I think it's obviously no secret that we have a number of vacant buildings in the city, and in conversations, I think at this point is when we actually still had our code enforcement officer in place, which we sorely miss, and in conversations about ways in which we can look into some tools to just kind of bring some accountability and kind of some more substance into our ordinances in terms of what we already have in place, just looking to see if there was a way to revise those. I don't have the specific language in front of me. I'm sure Kara can pull it up in terms of what the fees are right now, but just looking to see if an increase in the registration fees would help, obviously, with revenue, and also feed into the whole enforcement piece as well.
Okay, thank you. Kara, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look into this one?
By ordinance, the dollars for property with 1 to 3 units. Commercial properties are 4 or more units, up based on how long it's been. 2000.
Do we have any information as to whether this is actually happening and we're actually collecting them? Okay, I will defer to Counselor Bartley. Oh, okay.
It's okay. So, we had ironically, we had a meeting on this very subject in the Board of Health 2 weeks ago, and the good news is that the city officials are aware of it, of the ordinance. I think in my humble opinion, the fee structure is pretty good. But the question I think you raise is, are we collecting on it? I think mainly no. I think that, I think what's happening though is that I think, Kevin, we might have some 10,400 parcels. Does that sound, that might sound about right. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. So the city officials, so we're talking the building, Board of Health, Solicitor's Office, planning, they're compiling the whole city on one database. And on that database, Councilor Valentin, is going to be the basic stuff. What kind of structure is it? Is it residential, commercial? What kind of residential is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, multifamily, all that sort of stuff. Then another column is it occupied? Yes or no? Another column is, have they paid the city a fee? Yes or no? In looking what they compiled to date, it would be primarily no. And I mean, only a handful, and we're talking under 10, have actually paid the fee. So for example, let's just take XYZ on South Street. And it's a 2-family, and it's been abandoned for 20 years, and we know that. Has that house registered with the city of Holyoke? No. Has the city of Holyoke affirmatively gone out to ascertain whether it's occupied? No. But the city councilor for the ward happened to notice that it was vacant, because somebody came to a Ward 3 meeting and they said that. So I would turn that around, but then we have to investigate it. So, Councilor, I think this is a good order. I think that the fee structure, from what I could tell, if we could work hand in glove with, remember that we were talking last year about receiverships. We had at least 3 hearings on that in this committee about receivership. And so I think if we once we get all the data collected, which is going to take probably a couple months with all their other myriad duties they have to do, get the data collected, and then see how hard we're doing, how hard of a job we're doing on, or how hard a job it is to collect the revenue. Then once you have that, whether collected or not, the question mark is, what do you do with it? Do you go down to Registry of Deeds and file a lien, which costs $75 to record the darn thing, for a non-payment of a $100 fee? So one of the important things Kara's working on with Brian Fitzgerald is to figure out, and along with Damien Cody, is to figure out if the city's going to lien something. In other words, we're going to invest money recording and look at, are we going to get a return on our investment? Are we going to get our money back, i.e. all the fines, all the time and effort we put into it, and ultimately make ourselves whole. So it's a very cumbersome process, and even that I know that was a tortured answer, but that was about after a 45-minute meeting we had, so I condensed it about as well as I could. So hopefully that helps.
Councilor Jordan?
Thank you. Agreed. I think the issue here is enforcement of this, as David articulated very well. Probably not ready to raise the fees. How about let's just start collecting what we got on the book so far? I think, I will say, in the city's defense, some of the bigger ones, they have gone after. For example, right next door to us has a $3,000 registration fee, and they got sent a bill in the mail. But as a general rule, that's right, they're not going after these people. They should be. I myself made up a list for Ward 6 and turned it in on every single one that I had code violations, because that's my hot issue is, I want to go after people that have these, it's one thing where the house ain't painted or it looks a little, needs a help. It's another thing when people just totally let their homes go. I mean, I've got houses in Ward 6 where I got, front porches totally collapsing, people with tarps on roofs. Some of these houses look like Shantyville. And people just I don't care. They don't care about code violations. They don't care about these things. And the city, we pay people to go after these homes. And that's what the heck they're supposed to be doing, to go after these. And the ones that are abandoned, they should be sending them for registration fees and pushing on all these type of things. So I think my personal recommendation to the ward counselors in particular is go around your ward and give them the list of the ones you want to zero in on, and then you have to do the follow-up until now, eventually it sounds like it's going to be more standardized. But I would assume even that list, once compiled, will be a point in time, and it will continue to need to be updated and modified as conditions change. But I think the issue here is enforcement at this point.
So it sounds like we do have some action going in that direction. Counselor Bartley, you
Yeah,
wanted to
so
follow up?
yeah, just what Counselor Jordan said, so going around the ward as often as I do, and especially in campaign time, you really get a sense of which properties are occupied and which aren't. And yeah, and Kevin, you did it yourself a couple times, and Josie, you did too, so you know, and so what I did was I put together an actual list and sent it to Brian. I didn't make a big splash about it. I just sent it to Brian and to Sean in the Board of Health, and so we'll look at it. And then, as you know, Josie, I'm pretty regular on that C-Click Fix, and I, in fact, I went back to double check a house that had a recliner on the front lawn since October. You had no result from the Board of Health. I put the C-Click Fix on in December, and I just checked it tonight before I came here because I knew this order was coming up, and the thing's finally gone. Which, it's owned by a bank. The house is owned by a bank. So.
It was a nice brown recliner.
It's, yes, and
It's at Councilor Jordan's house.
And hopefully it went to a deserving family.
Chapin Street, my former stomping ground.
That is your former stomping ground. So, at any rate, I hear your point on this. I think the issues, putting the database together and then enforcement. At this point, I'm not comfortable with raising fees and changing fees. Thank you.
Counselor Valentin?
Thank you. Just to clarify, when I filed this order in June of 2014, so obviously way before this meeting was happening, that the Board of Health had recently, I filed it mainly because I thought that the $100 fee seemed pretty low. I'm not sure what it is in neighboring cities and towns, but it seems to me that just to we have a huge issue with people just walking away from properties, obviously. And that if the message is, if you have a vacant building, you just walk away and you just pay $100 or don't. It's just not, there's one part is obviously the enforcement. The other one is it's not really a message of kind of a lot of accountability. So that's kind of where the order came from. And I wasn't looking for those 100 to go to 1,000. I mean, maybe it was, 150 or 200. I don't know. I mean, obviously it would be a bigger conversation to think about numbers. And I'm fine, with saying that the order's been complied with and that further conversations will continue to happen. But again, this was filed a while back, and it's an ongoing issue. And as ward counselors, we particularly know what the experience with these is. So I just wanted to clarify that's where my original thought was, that 100 seemed like kind of low for the number of these that we have throughout the city.
And that would be referring usually to a single-family home.
Correct.
Or two-family home. I guess it could be maybe one of the large Victorians that got converted into 3 could fall under that as well. But if you're comfortable, we'll see how this project moves forward, and then you could always refile if there's nothing positive happening.
In consolation, I mean, it's hard to say the 100 is having an impact or not, because we're not charging them even the 100.
We're not, yeah.
If we start charging them the
We're not doing
100,
it.
then maybe then you can make a good judgment whether or not it needs to go up.
And when sorry, through the chair, and when I filed this, I didn't necessarily have the information about what the enforcement looked like, and it's obviously not a surprise at this point that the enforcement has not been great, and then I understand where it's not as much the amount of the fee, but just getting it done in the first place.
Right, and hopefully hand in hand with the receivership program.
What
That's
department is
going
in
to help
charge, Dave,
move
to
things.
enforce the $100
So-
and all these fees? Who's in?
I'd want to read through the ordinance, but I would assume Board of Health.
I believe
can
it's
take it,
Board of
and
Health.
building
Is it the Board
building
of
can take it, but definitely Board of Health.
So I'd like to entertain a motion.
And police.
Order's been complied with.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just make a point of order?
Sure.
Well, that's not really a point of order. I just want to clarify something Councilor Jordan just said. May I?
Sure.
So, and I believe the police department, they can ticket under any city ordinance. So Board of Health, Police Department, Building Department.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair.
No problem.
Thank
Good
now.
night. I see our engineer Yam Lip is here. Yay. So I'll entertain a motion to take up item 1.
Second?
So
All in
moved,
favor?
second. Aye.
Okay. Item 1, filed by Counselor Jordan, that the city engineer investigate stopping the allowance for the right-on-red turning from Route 141 onto Northampton Street in front of the Northampton Street Fire Station. So we'll give you a minute there. Oh, thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
I had discussion with Bill Fuquay, the superintendent, and also I had a meeting with Warren regarding these intersections. This is one of the intersections that we propose to, have it looked at. It's an old intersection, signals that was constructed in 1970. This is something that we feel that the study and the design by a consultant would lead to a project that be funded through TIP project. So, all that said, that we look at the I've looked at the accident for the past 5 years. There's about 19 accidents, mainly minor fender benders.
I'm sorry, over how many years?
In 5 years,
Five?
there are 19 accidents. So
in 5 years?
it's higher than the average for similar intersection within this area. So, but again, none has to do with because of the lack of the sign restriction for turning movement. Based on we did manual count traffic, done the automatic traffic reading. Based on the record, based on the traffic count, there's a quarter of the traffic coming down East Hampton Road would take a left turn there.
You mean a right turn?
Right turn, I'm sorry. So, and to restrict that, take that out of a phase, lead to backups. I feel that based on, this is just a preliminary traffic count, and it would, the intersection now, it's an old intersections, and it's not functioning like it was. It's functioning well below the design level of service. So I feel that to put in a restriction on the right turn, it would just create more of a backups, and it would in turn,
back up the hill.
again, would create more of a frequency in the accidents. Based on that, at this point, I'd like to hold off on the put a restriction on the no turn on red until we complete a complete design and recommendation.
I'll yield to the maker of the
Yeah,
order.
thanks. Yeah, thank you for that very thoughtful analysis. I do appreciate it. A couple of different issues I want you to consider into play here. One of the concerns is that the folks coming off Dillon Avenue have, by the traffic never really actually being stopped, they have almost a no ability to get off of Dillon Avenue, okay? Because, for example, when the light is green, the traffic is coming through. When the light is red, the traffic is still coming through. So therefore, they have no, it's very, very difficult for the people right next to this, on the other side of the fire station and next nest, to actually come out onto Northampton Street. And what that's causing is, it's very difficult as a general rule to get onto Northampton Street from all these different side streets, whether it's Florence and Belvedere and the other ones, already. So that's causing backup issues. But for the folks on Dillon, they felt there's gotta be some opportunity for us to be able to get off the street, safely, especially when you're gonna take a left turn going north on Route 5. That's where it's really bad. And so the view was, if we allowed, obviously, the traffic to flow through on green is fine, but on red, maybe, let me ask you this as a compromise, could we do it for limited hours at least during the, for example, what if we did no turn on red, because we're doing that like in Ward 3, I'll use the Ward 3 rule, like 6 to 9 a.m., and then like, say, 4 to 6 p.m., that would be at least helpful during the peak times, and then the rest of the time you could go through.
Again, this would need a new control for the intersection, because the intersection is old. A new control would, you can add one more phase where you can have delay green during certain time, and then, shorten the green at certain time. You can do that with the new control, but for this one here.
For the traffic coming south or what have you.
Correct. Because, again, you can restrict a right turn, but if you have better detection and you have control that can accommodate the detection, then you can move traffic based on the evening or morning rush hour. If you put a restriction right turn on red, say in the hour 5 to 6, and you're trying to accommodate that by adding more green on East Hampton Road, you would then back up the Route 5 traffic beyond, I would say to that where Dunkin' Donut is.
What I was suggesting is, if we did approve this, the only thing that I think would occur would be that the cars, instead of going through, would start queuing up behind, right? Because they have to wait till it turns green, the people going right? But that's a huge hill that goes all the way up. I mean, there's a lot of room for queue there. I mean, it's not really that.
Right.
It seems safe there for them to queue if they had to,
Yes, it would be safer for the people who are trying to get onto Route 5, for sure, because you would obviously add more longer gaps. But I used to travel through, on that road every day coming from Long Meadow, and that, we have days where back up to the ramp. If you start restricting the right turn, which is a quarter of the traffic flow, you will fill up that queue fairly quick. And again, we can test it out and try, but this would need approval from the state also, because this signal intersection was designed and constructed by federal and state money.
Sure.
And that's part of the agreement that we signed. If you look in the back, that was signed some time ago, and
I mean, I'd be willing to how about if we just tried it for the 6 to 9 in the morning, and then the 4 to 6 at night? Even if we just tried it then the rest of the time it would be just normal, regular, the Ward 3 rule. That seems to work good over on Hitchcock. Because they have the same thing, right? You're coming down Hitchcock, and used to not, you could always just keep turning right? And then now you're allowed to, turn right at the certain hours, correct? I believe I got that right.
It was no right on red.
Yeah, so that's the same issue,
He made
right?
it looser,
Yeah.
not tighter.
I had a conversation with the state, and would entertain the stop on red, the stop, then turn. That's not an issue. Again, the restriction within certain times, I think they would go for that too, but we would need a letter from the city to them justifying why we're doing that with a little more backup of the study. And we'll see where we can go from there.
Well, okay. I guess the justification would be to allow folks, I mean, you do have a fire station right there, and I said, and you also have the folks trying to get off the side street, just to give them an ability. I mean, but if you have something you want to do with that intersection to change so that there's a break there of some amount to allow the people from Dillon and otherwise, but that ends up having a queue effect, because once that flow gets going down Northampton Street, right, having any break at least creates break windows on all the side streets going down Northampton Street.
Correct.
Until you get to Sargent. I mean, you're the professional, but I'm just saying,
Again,
maybe you have a better idea to help.
The goal, I mean.
Oh, yeah, I'm all set. I mean, my points.
Counselor Shatno?
Well, two things. One, I totally agree with Counselor Jordan. I have a front row show to it every single day. And especially that 4 to 6 window, all the accidents that almost happen every day, it is frightening. So if we could do those hours, it'd be great. It's impossible to get out. I take a right, I mean, I live left, and I take a right because I can't get left every time I leave Dillon Avenue. But secondly, when you come down the hill and it's a red, you're not supposed to just blow through it, and that's what people do.
Exactly, that's the other problem.
So, I mean, of course, it always comes down to enforcement, and what do you do, But, I mean, people, they do not slow down coming down off that ramp. They do
Treat it
not
like a
slow down.
yield.
They treat it like a yield. And when you're
Yeah.
supposed to stop at red, then go, not just go.
That's right.
So that's like the big problem over there is, and probably why there was 19 fender benders, I witnessed probably all 19 of them, is because they don't stop, and they smash into the people who are stopped to go into Dunkin' Donuts, or take a left to go to Walgreens, or maybe take a right to go down Dillon Ave, but, yeah. But it's frightening over there. It is.
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, so, thank you. I think this is an excellent order. I would certainly support some kind of a restriction on it. I just wanted to make two comments, Yem, and thank you, Yem, for your input. One is, it'd be nice if I know state troopers, I mean, they have jurisdiction there, and so it'd be nice if they would, I mean, have a presence and maybe do some enforcement. That would be nice. That's one point I just want to make. And the other one is in anticipation of this and other things, I reached out to Mass DOT, Richard Massey, and before you came on board with the City of Holyoke, we had Al Stegman and Rich Massey come sit right where you are 2 years ago. And so Rich has agreed to come back, and they were here for a good hour, talking all sorts of highway and road issues in the city, and very, very informative. And we're going to have Rich, Al's not retired, but we're going to have Rich come, and I'm going to file an order for the next meeting. He's going to come at some point in March, and we'll happily discuss Route 141, as well as the canal bridges, as well as many other things. So I just want to make that known. Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich is still the interim, I believe. Rich is still the interim director?
Oh, sounds right.
Okay, I'm not sure when he may be full-time or not.
So what is your pleasure on?
My motion is to put this into effect for the hours of 6 to 9 and 4 to 6.
Second.
This would pen the approval from,
Pending.
Of course,
Pending
pending Mass DOT approval.
so
And I would ask that you please
I would-
advocate
right, I would,
on our behalf.
Exactly, I would generate a memo.
And I just have a question. You know that light, there was so much trouble with people blowing through, coming over the South Hadley Bridge? Where we finally put up the blinking red
Yep.
to get people's attention that, hey, you actually have to stop? They were doing the same thing there.
Hamden and Linden.
Correct. The same behavior was taking place at that intersection as what you're describing.
And somehow the city survived. Traffic backs up, but not too bad, and people seem to obey that.
Correct.
It is.
Right, it is a stop and go, but putting in the red blinking light made people actually stop, where the
Putting
stop
that sign.
sign had not.
But putting that sign, stop, on the red
Yes.
light, like, as if you need a sign for that, but
Well,
I guess you do.
But I have noticed that people do drive differently at that intersection now. So maybe we could take the lesson from that
Well,
intersection.
this has a red traffic light.
Again, if the, intersection is newer, where we have better detection and better, timing, and it wouldn't cost any backup, then we could install like a red arrow,
Is the
green
red-
arrow, and that would be a restriction
Makes
in
people
addition to signage.
seem to
Oh,
react to it differently
Right.
than they were with either just the solid red or the
Yeah,
stop sign.
okay.
I don't know why.
Yeah, if you want to change the lens on the bottom
I
to
don't
make
know
it a
why,
right arrow.
but
But again, that would, right, we have to change, we gotta improve other aspect of the intersection.
We'll leave that part to you.
okay, so we have a motion on the floor
To say,
to seek approval for 6 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. right on red.
No right on red.
No right on red.
that's it, you gotta wait till it turns green.
No right on red. And/or perhaps changing the light to the blinking red, which indicates the stop before you turn versus the old lighting that's there that people are ignoring. I mean,
Yeah, that'll be in effect on the none of these hours. That'll be the ones where it is allowed.
so is that part of your motion?
Sure, that is my motion.
Okay, so we have the motion on the hours that right on red will not be allowed and the blinking red. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So I'll accept a motion to take up item 2 and 3 as a package.
So moved.
Suspend the rules
Well,
to take up,
Do we have Yum for anything else on here?
yes, he's here for all these.
For 2 and 3? Oh.
Yes.
All the way up to 6, I
He's
think,
here,
right?
yes.
No.
Well, no. He's here till
4.
5, till 4, and I need to bring up one from later in the agenda.
Okay.
So that we can let him come and go and not sit through something he doesn't need to tonight. We're trying to be good to you.
Thank you.
So now we got Donnelly Street.
Yeah.
It's not in government. but go ahead.
Okay, so, we have, under suspension of the rules, we'll take up items 2 and 3 as a package. All in favor?
All right.
Okay, filed by Vacan, ordered that no overnight parking signs be placed in front of 5 Donley Street and across from 5 Donley Street per request of the residents. Item 3, filed by Counselor Leahy, ordered that Donley Street be posted residential parking. So I had left these orders in the jacket because I had received a call from a neighbor that the house had been sold. So the hope was that since the house was sold, it was getting fixed up and the actual people living there would be using the street, that the people who are using it for parking from Bowden Village would sort of be just by normal living, sort of moved off the street. But I've since then come to understand that the person that bought is simply fixing it up and will be putting it up for sale.
Okay.
So it's a little different situation. The residents in the neighborhood are having increased issues with the people parking. Now, instead of the 1 or 2, it's 2 to 3, and it's the people with the permit stickers from Bowden Village parking over on Dale Street, so apparently they can leave room for other people with stickers. And before you arrived, we did hear that over at the village right now, they have 217 units and 258 parking spaces. And so they're very squeezed, and they are working at alleviating that. And so that hopefully within the year that will happen. But in the meantime, the people in this very small neighborhood are feeling invaded, I think would be the right word to use. So what we're seeking from you is your recommendation as to what would be the best steps to take to let them have their neighborhood, but also not be so restrictive that they can't park in front of their own house. Do you know? So that's why I filed my order saying no overnight parking,
Okay.
to discourage the people just plunking their car there for
So
constant basis.
it's one or the other, correct?
And, well, and it could be some combination of both. Counselor Leahy filed it in the way, hoping that if it was posted residential parking only, that could be enforced for the neighbors, if it could be, and I'm not sure how it would be.
So this would apply to the whole Donnelly Street and not just,
It's really the area of
frontage.
Donley right at the end. It's the side lot to the house on Dale and in front of 5, because 5 has been empty for a very long time.
correct?
And so that little part of the street there is sort of seen as no man's land, if you will. So it's become a parking lot. And so the goal is to resolve that. And these orders were written in an intent to do that. But if you had another recommendation as the maker of one of the orders, I'd be happy to amend mine.
But this is, it's up to you to, if this is what you want. You know, as far as placement of signs, there's no issue with that. Enforcement is a little bit, it's always an issue with enforcement. And also the, how is the, if you were to give permit stickers to the resident, I mean. who
Well,
would-
right. If you, I mean, I was just concerned, say in the example, if we say residential parking, they're gonna say, well, I'm a resident, I live in Holyoke. I mean, you know?
Can I ask
So
a question?
I'm wondering what would be enforceable. So if it was no overnight parking, is that more, is there one that's more enforceable?
But that would apply to the people across the street also.
It would.
And if they choose to park overnight on, in front of their house, I mean, how would you deal with that? So,
Well, right now, the people in the neighborhood are saying, we want to pursue this because the house is still empty. It could be empty for who knows how long. And they're seeing it as an encroachment, and there's been other issues in the neighborhood as well. But, Counselor Jordan's in the queue if you have a
Yeah, I just had a quick,
idea.
more quick question to you, Linda, was, I know on Donnelly Street, everyone has a driveway. So, but do you think the residents do not, they want it just in front of that one house? Or is it the whole street, they want no overnight parking on street?
Well, in the particular discussions that I had, this is the area of the street that's problematic. Once you get further up the street, they're not going there. It's because there's no activity there.
And so there's some squatter that was living there and they were parking, instead of parking in the 5 Donnelly driveway, they were parking on the street?
No, the people from Bowden Village who can't park at the village are parking on Donley. And there's been some interactions with the neighbors. There's been police action and court action. It's been
Sure.
a problem.
Oh, okay, now it's becoming
And
clear.
there's been a restraining
guess
order.
the
I mean,
que-
there's a lot of issues.
So I guess the question is, we've made some progress here this evening on the whole Bowden Village parking situation. Do you want to go with having this if it's, you feel if there's enough progress, but if not, then we should just do it, and then why not have it for the whole street? I mean, it seems to me, if I live in Bowden Village and I live at XYZ Leary Drive, and I'm parking up here because I have a second car, so conceivably that's why I'm doing it. If you just say not in front of 5, I'm just gonna, I mean, hell, I already walked, you know, a quarter mile to get to that point. I'm at, what's now, why don't I just park my car in front of the next house?
Well,
If we, you know, I mean, that's what I would do if I, you know.
I hear what you're saying, but given the nature of the street, it does not lend itself for them to going further up the street. It's a very small street, it's fairly narrow. Once you get further up the street, you're in people's yards that are in and out of their house. Whereas in these two areas, they want to stop people at the entry to their neighborhood. That's what they want.
You know
and
better, so
I followed up
whatever you
with
wanna do is
them.
fine with me, I'm just saying.
And this is what they're looking for. I don't think they want their whole street posted no parking. They want a notice to stop people from coming into the street. They want to discourage the people from going in there in the first place.
Oh, at the beginning, so when you're turning in,
Yes.
it just says no parking on this street?
No, none here and none there, because they're going for convenience.
Okay.
Yeah, and so whatever, I would just like to know from you what you think would be the best thing to do. If no overnight parking takes care of it as a discouraging thing, I'm happy to do that. If
That's
you
the only
think,
time you're gonna have a problem is overnight.
or if you just think, say, no parking at all. I don't know. If other committee, Counselor Bartley,
Yeah,
you've dealt with these issues quite a bit.
no, and I hear your concern with the neighbors, and you want to be sensitive to the neighbors up there, so. Now, Dale's a street that feeds off of Jarvis, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so,
There's only 2 houses before you get to Donley.
right, yeah, so I guess so just back to 5 Donnelly, I've said this before, you know, I was involved with that pretty closely, and I think, you know, it's no small part, we got about 95% of the issue resolved.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
Because of, you know, our involvement, so, and now what we're saying is, and I believe that the buyer is the buyers are responsible people, and they're going to market the house, and they're gonna find a market rate person to come in and buy the house for wherever the market rate is, there's no subsidy there. So, I think this issue is gonna resolve itself, more or less. Coupled with what we did a little while ago with trying to alleviate the parking over at Bowden Village. Now, the question mark is gonna be, Linda, I mean, Bowden Village is still gonna be a tight, it's, you know, the number of cars, I don't think is gonna shrink. The number of motorists are not gonna get fewer. I think we're still gonna have to have some kind of a balance to find parking for a pretty densely populated place when there's overflow parking. So I would just ask us to think about whether we wanna have parking somewhere else. When Bowden Village gets too big, Kevin, as far as parking, number of cars go, the residents, the drivers gotta put their cars somewhere. So, right now, they're trying to get it off of Jarvis and put it off street, or put it, you know, off Jarvis and get onto Donley. If we don't allow parking at Donley, or Dale Street, I mean, where do you wanna?
They can't park on Dale, it's too narrow, which is why they're not.
Okay, so, I mean, I guess if we're gonna, if you wanna have no parking at all, that's fine, I'll support it, but I'm just saying, at some point, the more cars are gonna come, I don't think fewer, I don't think we
Well-
solve the problem, so they're gonna go somewhere else, and where are they gonna wind up?
Thank you, Counselor Bartley. That was one of the reasons why I filed the order for no overnight parking. Because I thought that it might alleviate the people that are just sort of camping out over there without restricting the use for the people who actually live there, or somebody who might be visiting them. You know, somebody could have a picnic on Dale Street, you know? So,
But then, there's another cul-de-sac, just,
I mean, it's enforcement,
Right,
it's, you know,
right.
it's more sign pollution, I mean, you know.
so, they are, and I had left it in the jacket for a month, thinking the house was sold and maybe the concerns were alleviated. So in the next month, I followed up in the neighborhood, and the concerns are as great or greater
Well, I mean,
in the particular neighborhood. So I'm happy to limit it with the no overnight parking to see if that discourages the problems without, to your
Okay.
point, saying no parking. You know,
so what hours do you wanna have? Do you wanna make up, so no overnight parking meeting specifically, what hours?
what have we typically done when we have said that before? Does any member of the committee remember when we say no overnight parking? It's usually after 8 or 9 or something like
I'd
that.
say after 9 o'clock, you know,
Say 9 PM to
to
what?
6 AM.
Get up and move your car. Okay, whatever you wanna,
Right,
so here's a section, 80.
Thanks. Ooh. 2 AM and 7 AM. That's on any street downtown. Huh, when's the last time that got
Bars
enforced?
close at 1:30, I guess.
Oh, that would close down a number of things, wouldn't it?
Well, it's like saying, when was the last time all the cars moved off of a Maple Street to allow plowing on Mondays between 5 and 7? There's gotta be 30 signs on Maple Street right now saying, no parking,
I guess if the committee is
not
willing,
forced.
I'd like to entertain a motion about no overnight parking from 9 PM to 7 AM.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then hopefully it gets resolved and the people live there and
And the
we
Counselor,
come and we take it away, and it
Counselor-
becomes a non-issue.
what do you want to do with Counselor number 3, please?
Complied with, or?
Yeah,
Comply with. Motion to, your orders comply with.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So motion to take up
So
item
moved.
4? All in favor?
Aye.
Filed by Counselor Bresnahan, who was aware that this would be on the agenda tonight. Although, since he's not here, I'm inclined to table it.
No, I can speak for it.
Oh, okay, good enough. So motion to take item 4 off the table? All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Okay. Filed by Counselor Bresnahan, ordered that DPW install appropriate signage stating local traffic only, no commercial vehicles on Lower Westfield Road from Whiting Farms Road to Holyoke Family, and on Route 5 at the bottom of Lower Westfield Road. And I know, you already came in and spoke to this. However, the maker of the order had not been aware that it was on the agenda, and in fairness to him, that was a reasonable objection. And so that's why it's back on the agenda, and I'll yield to Counselor Bartley.
Yeah, I think that, I think what Counselor Bresnahan is suggesting here is not unreasonable, but I think what Yem was saying last week when or 2 weeks ago when he was here, is that we've got to do a traffic study and then a truck study to figure out where, the number of cars that go through there, and then if we had kind of limited access to that site, where would they be diverted to? So, I guess I'm okay with hearing from Yem on that, and it's how much time he needs for a study, and then why don't we just get his, we'll leave it on the table until such time as he produces a study. So, Yem?
Okay, and if you can hang on just a minute, because I did follow up with the neighbors down there. It's a Ward 5 issue. The main concern that they're having down there are the tractor-trailer trucks and the trash trucks, which are heavy vehicles coming very, very early in the morning and late at night, mostly coming up from Main Street, using it as a cut-through to access to either where they're going or going back from where they're coming from, is part of the traffic.
Northampton Road or Main Street?
Main
From
Street.
Main Street then.
Cutting up the
Okay.
back way.
Okay.
So, on Homestead southbound, there is the limitation, which is not enforced, which has been a constant complaint, but there is a posted limitation that none of the heavy trucks are supposed to be on that road after, I believe it's 8 at night, till the next morning.
6.
So when I spoke to the neighbors, they're looking for a similar restriction as was put in place on Homestead. And I don't want to sound cynical, but I mean, it's posted, I've had more signs posted on 202, Homestead Avenue, and still I get frequent complaints, that the heavy trucks are still going south instead of north. But it will push it there, perhaps more, but that is what, when I spoke with them in more detail, the people in the neighborhood are seeking specifically.
Okay.
Counselor Bartley?
So, and I'll just be quick. The signage is no commercial vehicles over 2.5 tons between 8 PM and 6 AM.
6 a.m. Again, just checking the area, it does meet the warrant, but again, we have to come up with a route that the truck can go to now. If you look in the back, the third page of the,
Is that in the original chunk that you gave us today?
this second one with it, for the heavy commercial vehicle exclusion.
Wait.
Okay.
Oh, okay, that's it.
Okay,
You
right,
have
if you
it?
look at the last page,
You have yours? See mine.
I don't have it.
I have the map on mine.
All right, maybe I misplaced mine. I'll share with him. Oh, is that extra?
Okay.
Thank you.
so, so the key here is to come up with an alternative route that we can present to the state, Mass DOT. And again, they want to see traffic count, they want to see the amount of truck traffic, the percentage of truck traffic that would warrant the need of the signage.
Bless you.
You know, the only route that you know, that we can use would be through Tokaneki, is that how you say that?
Yeah, Tokaniki.
Waiting
yep.
Farms. Waiting Farms.
For Waiting Farm, then Tokaneki, then back down to
Holy Family.
Oh no, that would be. See those trucks going up Tokaniki.
Well, no, I think he wants to exclude the whole lower Westfield, I mean, that whole other section of lower Westfield Road, though.
Well, they don't want it to go down. They
He's
don't want to
asking
go
for
by.
all of this to be excluded.
They don't want it to go by the houses to the stop sign.
and on Route 5. Okay,
He wants him to use 91 and come off exit 15.
okay, all right. Okay, then
And I wish the other guys would use
I'll take
the-
that back. So then the alternate, will be 5 and Waiting Farms Road.
Right. And I wish the other people would use the Mass Pike.
Of course, you
I
know, if
mean,
you live
give
on
me a
Whiting
break.
Farms, if you live
On
on
the
Whiting
other
Farms,
side.
you've got a million cars going by as it is, but
Okay, so then I would, again, I will generate a memo, and if you would like to see it, I can pass along a draft to you, and you can take a peek and sign off, and
All right, so do you want to table this till we get the draft back? Then we'll take it back up, or what is the pleasure?
So what's your position, Linda? You're in favor of cutting off the commercials from this section of the road, or what are we doing?
Yeah, because I think what's happened is because there's more activity with the heavy trucks going on because of the transfer
So you're gonna have
station
to,
and a
you'll go
variety
Route
of
5
things.
to Kmart and come up? Okay, or you'll use,
Main Street
or
to
you'll
5.
use 91 and the Mass Pike and get off at exit 15 to go to the mall. That's fine. Okay, I make a motion, we approve that.
Is there a second?
how we,
Well, if we approve it, then he'll go ahead and do it, and then we'll have to get it back just to look at it, or maybe not.
I
Maybe
mean, I
we'll
already
be
know,
done.
we've already
We
got.
already know what it is.
Yeah, the option is we eliminate this section, and they're gonna just have to use Route 5
And
and
Whiting
go,
Farms.
and Whiting Farms Road, or
91.
91 at the Mass Pike and exit 15. to
And
get-
91 would be our, well, 91 pushes them onto Homestead.
well, I mean, it's just, when it's all in black right here, is that, what does that mean? That
He-
means,
he-
that
yeah.
means what we're banning?
No, that's incorrect. He made a
That was
mistake.
Tokaniki, if you were going through Tokaniki and coming back out on,
That's not gonna
Or
happen,
Westfield when it
because the
turns
point
right.
is, Dave, this is excluded in the analysis too, but that didn't appear on his thing, see? It's all of that.
and honest to goodness, I don't even
It's,
think
it's
those
lower
trucks.
Westfield.
Exactly.
Right, I don't even think those trucks could get up Tokaniki.
Second. Second.
Lower Westfield on this side of Whiting Farms Road is gonna be out, period, for commercial vehicles.
Between 8 PM and 6
6
AM.
a.m.
Yeah, 8 to 6, okay.
Limited hours.
Yeah, it's not,
Limited hours.
correct.
Yes.
Now, refresh my
So
memory,
the-
why would we wanna allow that at midnight, though? I
No,
got a
no.
tractor trailer truck.
No, it's prohibited between 8 PM and 6 AM. The heavy trucks.
So that, they're okay with it during the day?
Yes.
We can't,
That-
well,
That's a mix, you know, it's not solely residential, it's,
Because I was gonna say, why not just 24 hours a day, no use for commercial on that section? Why, At 2 in the afternoon, why do I want to have tractor-trailer trucks coming? That is a very steep, windy road, and number two, for a safety, as you know, coming in front of where the the SSJs are, right? That new bridge that's there, I mean, it's really only a car length and a half wide, because even the two cars, it's very hairy to even have two passenger cars coming at the same time over the overpass for the trains. And as you're then making the turn, I wouldn't want to have tractor-trailer trucks. To me, should be all the time commercial vehicles
If it's all
off of that.
residential there, in that area, yes, but.
You've got your correctional institution up there.
I'm talking the big commercial vehicles, like tractor-trailer
Well,
trucks.
this is, what does it say, 3.5 tons? Hang on a sec. Counselor Shatnoff has the floor.
Business friendly.
Oh, thank you.
This is zoning map, because it's partially residential, exclusive 24 hours.
Oh,
And
not all
the concerns I've heard from people on that street is they don't expect it to be 24 hour. They just
Correct.
want it limited, and they just want help with the situation.
They don't want their windows shaking at 3 in the morning.
but they can shake at 2 in the afternoon. They don't care.
Well,
All right.
Except on Saturdays when there's no delivery.
okay, so the motion on the table, if I understood it correctly, is to limit the traffic per the posting, no trucks over, was it 3.5? 2.5 tons between the hours of 8 PM and 6 AM.
That's on the floor.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor? Aye.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Progress.
Look at that. Government efficiency.
That's my word, yeah. I mean, speed of light efficiency.
Thank
here.
you for this. Yem, this is, I have to say, you've come in, I've only had a couple meetings so far, but I mean, you come in, you're organized, you give us the information we need,
very
and
prepared.
it's
Been here like 10
wonderful.
times already.
Thank you.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
Thank you. Motion to take up 5.
Second.
Keep it rolling.
Was there a later one you needed?
Hang on. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. Item 11, Counselor Bartley.
Motion
accept the
to suspend the rules to
rules.
go up to item 11 and take it off the table.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Name change.
Item 11, filed by Counselor Bartley.
Bartlett Street.
Order that the name be changed on the portion of, how do you pronounce that street? Coit Street, that is west of Hillside Avenue. I do recall us discussing this in committee. It must have ended up tabled some months ago. But,
Barley Boulevard.
but I thought we might need our engineer's input, so, yes, Counselor Bartley.
Well, yeah, we're gonna have to table this tonight, so I believe this, we all know the background, right? We know the background why I did this, because the streets, it cross over Hillside and it doesn't align. There's a little jog, So the thinking was to make, to have Coit Street on the west side of Hillside just remain Coit Street, and on the east side, turn it to East Coit Street. Very simple. So the homeowner's okay with it, the residents are okay with it, but my understanding, I guess we would need some clarification from legal on this, is I believe we need to have a public hearing on it. So, so we need to, formally notify there's one resident on that street, but we formally notify folks within a certain radius, I suppose, and then have a public hearing. That's my understanding of the process.
Can I have a motion to suspend the rules so Kara can approach?
I thought we were gonna, sure.
Or under suspension? We can stay under suspension?
You need time? Okay. So Madam Chair?
You're gonna table this anyways, all right?
Yes, Counselor Bartley?
I don't really have any direct questions for Yem.
Okay.
I think that is pretty straightforward, and
Okay.
I don't really think we need a,
And you think we
traffic
need a
engineer.
hearing?
that's my understanding, that we
would
have to have a public hearing.
record the plan with the registry of deeds as such, from here to here.
Sure.
But from a,
All right. So,
but from a safety point of view, you would tend to agree, since it's not even a straight line, that it,
I mean, it could be changed if there's no landowners that have, deeds attached to the street.
Oh,
that would
right.
have to-
Well,
If-
say that again?
If there's no address attached to that particular section of the road where,
There is. There is one address on there.
okay, and that person would have to change all their record from, say, Coy to Hillside.
Like East Coast, yeah, and they were fine with that. And I think the only reason I brought it up is because, just for public safety, because it's a bizarre little layout, if you will. So it just seemed to me that this would make better sense from a public safety, from a, E911 perspective.
Again, I mean, I don't know enough about it to give an opinion on this, but if you can table it, I would like to take a look at it from, the condition, what's out there, and whatever.
We should have gone today when we had the time, but we can do it anytime.
I wasn't aware of this one, I'm sorry.
All right, well, good.
Well, and I only noticed,
I didn't realize it from
I wasn't even sure
2014.
that it pertained to, but when I saw it and we were doing all the other ones, I didn't want to come to it later and say, oh, we should have asked a question. That was all.
You almost wonder if we could have done something like just call it the whole thing, that other little section, continue it as Merrick Avenue, and then, whatever the number was that the guy had, if it jibed, like if it was like in the 40s of Merrick Ave, but whatever. East Coit, that's what we did on all, I remember, God, 15 years ago, we had to do all these, when they did the E911 or so, you had to rename a ton of streets. Yeah, it's a good catch.
So do you want to table this for now, to see if we need to do the public hearing?
Yeah, we can wait for Kara to
All right,
interject later.
so we'll just.
Motion
leave
to
it.
table.
All in favor?
All right.
Progress.
11 is tabled. Thanks a lot, Yum.
Thank you, have a good night.
Okay, motion to take up item 5.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Filed by Counselor Jordan, that whenever a state or federal statute or regulation calls for local approval of any law for applicability in the city of Holyoke, that local approval shall only be granted by the city council.
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, draw it, so that'll be put in legal form for our next meeting. Beautiful.
Motion to take up 6.
Second.
I just want to make sure Kara's,
We adopted 5, just so you're following us, so we'll have a new ordinance on
So we'll
that
need
for
legal?
the next meeting.
number
All
5.
right, number 6. Motion to remove 6 from the table.
Second.
Oh, to 5? So 5. Yeah, 5
Yep.
was adopted.
As written.
6. Motion to remove 6 from the table.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 6, filed by Counselor Jordan, ordered that an ordinance be created which states that licenses in land or other real property of the city may not be issued until 2/3 of the city council has approved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, yeah. Let me just ask on,
The memo?
yeah, briefly.
I'm sorry, I
yeah,
knew you
let's
gave me
pass out
one
the
on,
memo.
Oh, I didn't see it. I'm
We'll have a
sorry. I'm sorry, Kara.
brief discussion on that one. No, it's the one under the map there. I have.
sorry, I didn't see that one.
Kara, the only thing is on these is it looks like there's some other quote-unquote licenses given out. Things like the auditorium or the museum, like if people want to rent it to have a wedding, obviously, we're not really deeply concerned about. People want to, you're calling those licenses when somebody comes in for the evening and they rent the place too? Okay. So,
But your order said land and other real property.
yeah, I'm mostly
Oh,
okay, so for those, if it's these specific buildings, can we just put in the ordinance that on the, how are those approved now? By the independent commissions? Like, who's issuing, like, if I want to rent the senior center, who do I get the approval
Right,
from now?
the department. I mean, technically, legally, anytime somebody uses city property for any, I put the definitions on the front page there. Any agreements that Park and Rec does for the use of city fields, the auditorium, wisteria hearse for weddings, those are all licenses because they're for a specific purpose. They're not giving an interest in the land.
Right. We agree with you.
so-
My
Is your mic
point
on?
is, who has the
that
issuing
mic.
authority now
Just,
on all these? And is it just sort of by custom, or?
No, it's the various, and Wisteria Hearst is done through the director of the museum, Park and Rec, I don't know.
Under what authority, though, does she have to issue those?
Well, as the department, I mean, technically, I guess you could say the mayor has granted it.
Right, well, that's my
Right,
point. It's
so
really the mayor unless we say otherwise, so it's the mayor and he's delegated it.
To the department heads under the charter, which he has the authority to delegate. So I would say, I mean, it's the mayor and through the charter can delegate to department heads, so his department heads, you know, for Park and Rec, if you want a permit, you come and Terry Shepherd and Pete Leclerc do approve those permits.
Go ahead.
But here's our concern. If you look down these lists that list all the current licenses that are given out by departments, they in no way, shape, or form relate remotely to a license such as exists for the correctional facility.
So you know, I got a remedy. This is an easy way to fix this.
Time limit.
Exactly, you just nailed it. Any license that shall exist for greater than 2 days
Well, I mean, that's.
shall require, well,
Okay.
yeah, you don't rent a park for 2 days.
Well, that would impact the licenses that are issued by planning, because whenever we sell property, we'll give a prospective purchaser a license to enter to conduct their due diligence on the
Well,
property.
we want to grant those. We don't want,
30
we don't want
days?
them to do it.
30 days, Kara? I mean, 30 days, Kevin? What's
I
that?
would say, I mean, 30 days at a minimum. I mean, a due diligence period under our purchase and sale agreements and permitting periods have been.
I mean, do they have a lot of those?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I mean, and I guess, you know, in order to write an ordinance, I think there needs to be a lot more detail. I mean, HEDIC, the HRA, they're frequently used. The city, I mean, maybe not a lot.
If they go over
but-
30 days, I think
Six-
we would want to approve that then. You know, that would exclude all the City Hall auditorium ones, all the Wisteria Hearst Museum, Senior Center, Library.
I would have to check with Terry Shepherd.
Parks and Rec.
The Park and
There.
Rec would be all set.
I don't think so.
Maybe Blue Sox.
Yeah, the Blue Sox, and their summer camp programs are probably more than 30 days.
Okay, well, they can come before us.
Well, they
then.
can come before us
Yeah,
then.
I mean, we should know what's
Football
going on in the
leagues,
city
baseball
anyhow.
leagues
Yeah.
are
We should know
all-
what's going on, and I'm just not.
And I would want to know, you know what, I also, as a safeguard of the finances, I'd like to know these financial arrangements. What kind of deals are they getting in exchange for that, you know? I mean, if there's serious dough involved with renting it out to the Blue Sox or otherwise, anything over 30 days of use of the city property, that should be coming through here. I mean, I think that's reasonable, you know, I really do.
I mean, I would suggest, I mean, you know, particularly I think that will impact Park and Rec. You know, I did ask Terry, you know, obviously the agenda was just published on Friday. I asked her to provide me with as much information as she could. You know, obviously she could give you those details better as far as what impact that might have on what programming they do. Because, you know, the list that I compiled was just kind of her basic information that she did give me.
So would the,
I mean, other than the Blue Sox and what, they have some camps that are go on over the summer?
I don't know how long those, I mean, they use Lynch, the gymnasium. I don't know what exactly they run there, but I know that's over the course of at least probably several months for whatever they do there. If they're basketball leagues, youth soccer leagues, youth baseball leagues.
The only
those
thing
are-
we have to be careful, Dave, is that
Those
they
are all more
don't,
than a month.
somebody doesn't get cute and they say, well, we issue consecutive 14-day or consecutive 30-day. It's gonna be like like they used to do with the never-ending acting department heads. We wanna make sure you can't just keep issuing a 30-day license out without our approval either. So we'd want that put in there, that it's one 30-day period.
what if we,
I can't answer, you know, what the Park and Rec does, so that would be a question for Terry to answer.
what if we were to take an approach based on dollars rather than time? The value of the license, rather than the amount of time? I mean, if you're talking
I actually-
baseball diamonds,
Yeah,
because that would be the season, right?
my fear, though, is what if the mayor wanted to just say, somebody have something for free, you know? I license out City Hall. I mean, right now, under current law, under this theory, he could license out City Hall, free of charge, rooms and offices in this building to, the Happy Club that wants to come in, and the mayor says, I'm gonna just start giving licenses out to do stuff,
Counselor Bartley?
So I really like this order, and I think it should be, I agree that the dollar amount is critical. I think it should be more based on time. But I just want to make it clear to the public that this is not about city councilors trying to, wrest control over something and micromanage the departments. That is not what this is about. So I made it clear that what happened with the geriatric authority, I disagreed with. And so there's going to be a pushback. But I think this will have a positive result because here's, for example, I mean, last summer, going by Crozier Field as I do virtually every single day, there were tournaments all going on. It's going by Mackenzie Stadium last year. It'd be nice to hear about the Blue Sox coming in and how long they're going to be here and get some details about the arrangement. I don't know what they are. And furthermore, it doesn't impact some of the smaller programming that they have, for example, which is still impactful. For example, what happened last year with the, that wasn't a circus, it was a 4-day fair with, Ferris wheels and all the rest of that. And so, I mean, people kind of want to know. And, as much as I admire the work of the Park and Rec Commission, that is done not on camera, not on tape recorder. It's done, I grant there are public meetings, but they're not nearly as public as our meetings. And I think the public would like to know some of these things that are going on in the community. So,
I just have one question
That's
for
that.
Kara. So Kara, you had begun to explain to us the length of time on the due diligence access relative to property, and how long is that period? Oh, that's long.
well, come and explain.
Well, then
Come
come on in, if they're giving them out
explain it.
that long. File a request. The other thing that I also recall vaguely too, that I remember, who was it that was giving out these licenses to, I want to put a Sputnik piece of art in the middle of a playground, and all of a sudden I can just, I get the okay from some commission here, and I decide, well, I'm world famous artist Kevin Jourdain, and I'm gonna build this structure, my own mini Statue of Liberty, and I'm gonna put it right in the middle of Crozier Field. Apparently, they have the authority to do that and leave it there permanently, I find some of these things interesting, but the main goal is why this needs to go on the books is someone opened up a loophole a mile wide that you could drive a train right through it in our laws on leases. And what they're doing is now just calling them a license.
I subverted it. That's what
They subverted the current law, so now we need to go to close the loophole.
the other extreme.
Yeah, and we'll find out if, we can always amend later if this becomes, unwieldy, but it seems to me 30 days is more than reasonable.
So
And it-
motion to reconsider our last action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And then, motion to, approve the order as discussed, in other words, to have it a 30-day, anything up to 30 days. Anything beyond, thank you,
Right.
anything exceeding 30 days in time, no matter whether it's a combined, 5, 10-day periods or what, anything more than 30 days in any form, shape, or form is subject to city council approval.
Correct, and that's gonna be non-renewable, right? If you can't give somebody, we grant a 25-day license and then another 25-day license and then another 25-day license. The
Non-renewal-
cumulative period for the same purpose cannot exceed 30 days without council approval.
It's a two-thirds vote?
Correct, because that's what the vote is for leases.
That's right, so if they we're consistent.
Okay, so this is what I understand is the motion before us. That licenses in land or other real property of the city that exceed 30 days may not be issued until 2/3 of the city council has approved. The license is non-renewable without city council approval.
That's the motion on the table.
Exactly.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 8, motion take up number 8.
Second.
Are you all set with that, Kara? Thanks.
Do you have a draft or anything you want us to go over together with that weekend? It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. All right.
Okay, so we dealt with 7.
So,
We can suspend rules, take up 8 and 9 as package.
second.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item 8, filed by Counselor Jordan, ordered that a handicap sign be placed in front of 79 Newton Street for Carlos Garcia. Now, hang on, I do have...
This was filed on as a courtesy to the Ward 1 counselor, so.
All right, just hang on, because I got out of order here, and I do have feedback from the Disabilities Commission. Newton Street. The feedback from the Disabilities Commission on this is that the application is incomplete. Page 2 has no name of the person completing the application. Page 4 is not filled out. Also, no copy of the placard. Registration of vehicle is regular registration number, not a handicap plate.
Okay, I make a motion that it be referred to the clerk's office to contact the applicant. My name was only used because they were apparently unable to get a hold of the Ward 1 counselor. So I filed it out for her as a courtesy. She ultimately became a co-sponsor. So if the clerk's office could try to make contact, if no contact is made, then we can give it leave to withdraw. If contact is made, they need to make the appropriate, provide the additional information. So I would request the clerk's office reach out to the applicant and provide the additional information that the Disabilities Commission has identified they need.
It looks like they'd have to obtain a,
Well, that may be a showstopper. Maybe they provided there was no copy of the placard provided.
okay.
They-
As long as we're in order to send this over to the clerk's office to follow up. Is that in order for
Yeah,
us to do that? Yeah?
yeah, right, because
Okay.
these applications originate with the clerk.
Okay.
So theoretically, the citizen is supposed to come in,
Okay,
fill it
gotcha.
out completely. Well, what happened was citizen comes in,
Okay,
they couldn't, the citizen tried to get a hold of the Ward 1 counselor, couldn't. So
Okay.
they called me up as a courtesy because the citizen wanted this filed. Now citizen apparently didn't do a complete enough job, so clerk office should call citizen or mail to citizen, you need to do these additional things to make Disabilities Commission happy. And if they can't, then they're out of luck. If they can, then they're back in business.
okay, so is that a motion?
Yes.
Second? All in favor?
Second.
Aye. Okay, so this will be referred over to the clerk's office.
For
I'll just
follow-up,
note to clerk. Follow-up. Okay, so item 9, filed by Counselor Bartley, I guess I should have read that into the record at the time. Ordered that handicap sign be placed in front of 62 Elm Street for Gail A. Bergeron. Getting buried. Okay.
So, again, this is Ward 1 as well. I just happened to be in the clerk's office when Gail came in, and I said, just in the interest of efficiency, I mean, I just put my name on it, and the Ward 1 counselor did add her name onto it as well.
Okay, and so I have documents from the commission. The commission has noted that they've received a copy of the registration. they've done a site inspection. Don Welch did it on January 19th, and application approval is recommended.
Just under discussion, if I-
Oh, sure,
just be-
Counselor Bartley.
Just before I forget, there's, Madam Chair, and I hate to dump this on your lap, but there's a order that I filed relative to 99 Carlton Street that I actually filed before 62 Elm, and I'm just wondering what the status of that is, and if you wouldn't mind, or if Ryan
Sure.
could follow up with the chair of the Disabilities Commission.
Just so you know, the reason that these were taken up tonight was because they came back from the commission. So
Yeah, it's-
if they had come back,
It
but
might
I'll
be
follow
pending.
up, sure.
Yeah, thank you. But a motion
No problem.
to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Motion to take up,
okay, now,
Items 10 through,
well, you got.
Okay.
How about we take up number 12?
hang on,
That's
because
the Jordan order.
oh,
now I have
yes.
highlighted a few orders, so if you recall, as a housekeeping matter, I sent the draft agenda with the old orders from 2014 out before the final agenda came out, asking any counselors that wanted any of the old ones that had been in the jacket for 2 years to be taken up. So I heard on a few. One that I heard
Not sure if I got that.
was Counselor Jordan relative to a 6/2/15 order, relative to the time for holding meetings. So if you want to take a motion to take up item 12.
So moved, yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion be adopted.
Item 12 by Counselor Jordan. Regarding the time for holding meetings be expanded to close any possible loopholes for certain boards, such as the Retirement Board, which is holding meetings at 9 a.m.
Oh, yeah. So what's the language,
I need all of these, there was a recent legal opinion that came from Kara that said apparently some of these boards are dancing on the head of a pin, which basically, nuancing themselves out of, the city council passed an ordinance that said, because we like transparent and open government, these commissions and otherwise should be meeting after 5 o'clock. However, some commissions, Retirement Board being the main one, seem to feel that that doesn't apply to them. And so I believe, Kara, if I paraphrasing your prior legal opinion, you adroitly go through that and basically say, because it was not, I guess the way we said it was a mayor commission or a city council commission, but we wanted it to be any multi-member commission, period, like in the whole city. All commissions, all of them, have to be after 5 o'clock. Or to have an exception to that, they have to get the approval of the mayor and the city council president in order to get an exception if, say, something comes up, an emergency. And so this is to add in Retirement Board. You recall that, right?
Well, right, so as it's written now, it's all municipal boards.
And so the Retirement Board has a couple members, well, that's true for,
Their argument was that they're not correct and they're their own. That was their argument.
they're a municipal board, though.
So would we have to add in language that says, "or body created by statute"?
Or, yeah, they were created by a special act of the city, correct?
State?
What's the suggested wording there to include them? Let's just name them, the Holyoke, and the Holyoke Retirement Board.
Right.
Well, no, we don't mean that. We mean under the sphere of city government. I'm not looking to incorporate private corporations here. We have no jurisdiction there, but, all right, so the Holyoke Retirement Board, what about the Housing Authority? Holyoke Housing Commission? Yeah. I mean, they're appointed by,
mayor?
they are appointed by the mayor,
So that's covered then.
Covered. But the
And they-
retirement board was?
Theirs is not a
theirs is-
problem. They have their meetings. The housing hasn't been a problem because they have their meetings in the evening anyways. We should just name them just to be extra particular.
And they meet in the evening.
Yeah, so for most of these, it's the retirement board was the only one giving a hard time. They're meeting at like 9 and 10 in the morning. So, so we'll motion to amend to add HEDIC, HRA, Holyoke Housing Authority, Holyoke Retirement Board. Are we missing any? I think that covers it, right? Okay. That's the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is adopted. Okay, housekeeping. I'll accept a motion to give item 13 leave to withdraw. It's a duplicate.
Second?
So moved. No, not yet.
Oh, I'm out of order.
we
But,
skip-
but I have a reason. So I should say suspend the rules, take up 13, give leave to withdraw. to do it in
Motion
the pre-
suspend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, take up item 13.
Motion give leave to withdraw.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
It's just a duplicate.
Yep.
Okay, so now returning to regular order. Having heard no specific feedback from any counselor relative to any of the other listed orders, I would, yes? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
didn't answer your email, because I knew I was gonna.
That's okay.
So I didn't think I had to,
But
but item
that's
33,
fine.
Please, if we could.
So if
Well,
you
we'll
could
just
just,
exclude that one. We'll take that one up. We can exclude that from the package.
and if anybody else, I had a question, I didn't know on the procurement ones, I put question marks, 35, 36, 37, I didn't know. Those are old news, no news, future news. So my thought was to take items 10 through 39, excluding 38, which we already dealt with, excluding 33, which we have been asked to act upon, to do an abbreviated reading with the intent to give leave to withdraw, no action having been taken for 2 years. Yes, you may. Point of order or point of information?
Just a point, just a comment on the motion, so, I'll
I'm
go-
just,
I'll go
I'm
along
just
with giving a leave
asking
to
for
withdraw.
consideration
So
of a
motion,
motion.
so the,
I'm
so,
not- No,
No,
your
motion,
point?
motion's to give them all leave to withdraw, I know that, right? But I just want to make it under discussion. I just want to make a comment.
Sure. Counselor Bartley.
Okay, so, several of these orders, or at least a few of them are my names, but, I think that, just for the public, number 30 happened to be at a time when there was a little bit of controversy about that issue happening in, a person was hauled into court, district court, for not paying a $5 fee to the city clerk. I mean, it was bizarre, and so but it got straightened out in its own way. I think I filed that one out of frustration. 35 and 37, again, those were to try to make, and it's really 30B, it's not 30, I might have typed it wrong, but those are procurement laws in which there are exceptions to public procurement. And so the public knows there's about 33 exceptions to public procurement. In other words, the executive can just hire anybody. And we, I think, made a wise move with making the law stronger in terms of insurance. And I thought I had filed an order relative to that for towing contractors. Since it's not in the jacket, I may have been mistaken, so I will file an order for the next meeting relative to making towing contractors not exempt from 30B. So so get ready for that. So in this case, I put outside legal and then banking, only because, I mean, just a perfect example, and Kevin can speak to this with our the cable what's the fee called, Kevin, for cable, the cable access fee that you find?
Franchise fee.
Franchise fee, thank you for that technical term. Franchise fee, whatever it is, $6 now. It accrues in the tens of thousands of dollars on a monthly basis. Does the public notice? Probably not. And where does the money go? Well, it's not sitting in the vault somewhere in room 1. It's sitting in a bank. And wouldn't it be nice if it was, in my opinion, wouldn't it be nice if it was not all dumped into one bank? Wouldn't it be nice if it was, we have several local banks here. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a choice? But then I started thinking about it when you sent the order. It might be overly burdensome. But that was a reason why I filed that. Same way with outside legal. To have public bid for outside legal, and I'll just, we don't do it. So.
We can keep these.
Well, no, I guess my point is we can. Let me think them out some more.
It sounds like you're gonna come forward with towing anyways.
Yes, I am. I am going to do that for you. You'll see that on the next agenda, because apparently I didn't do it. I thought I did, but.
If I may, just as a point of information?
Yeah.
Okay, so as a point of information, these old orders go through June of 2014. There may be more procurement orders that are still in the jacket, but I couldn't pull every old order out. It just would have been overwhelming. So it might be in the jacket.
No, to the chair, I think the chair did a marvelous job with this. There's so many orders queued up, and it's not on the chair, it's not on the prior chair's, it's not her fault, it's not your, it's the maker's fault, it's my fault for not, staying on point with these and getting them on the agenda, because, Rebecca was great. Whenever I want something on the agenda, she put it right on there, so it's my fault completely. So I just want to make that clear, and so let's just move these out. The only exception I want to make is for 36, because 36, I'd actually want to have a discussion on.
Okay.
So I would like to that's Counselor Soto's order, which I happen to agree with.
Okay.
But the rest of them, I'm good to go with, cleaning out the jacket, and we can move to a better day.
Right, and just as a point of information for the public who may be watching also, the intent of this isn't to stifle any discussion or debate over matters of the city, but when items have just, because of sheer volume and sheer time spent on any number of matters, when they've been sitting for 2 years and many of the makers aren't even here to follow up on them, it's just a matter of making the workload manageable. And I encourage anybody that has any of these topics that they want to refile on to do so. However, many of the items have either taken care of themselves or due to other changes that have taken place since they were filed have become less relevant than they were at the time. So,
Did Counselor Lisi want to say anything about 32? Or did
she did not.
Okay, that one had to do with, if you recall, the parade.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
But
So
she did not.
I think that's a little bit over. Okay.
So,
right.
if, I was just wondering if the committee was comfortable with abbreviated reading. I would do it-
Abbreviated reading of all of these, and motion to give leave to withdraw with all except 33 and 36.
And I'll read each item as I read it, so we'll know specifically which ones we're talking about, okay? Now, this, item 10 was filed by Counselor Alexander 3414. I actually thought this was a good order. This was an order that related to adopting an ordinance requiring any appointees or reappointees of city boards, commissions, committees, et cetera, be current with their taxes, just like people who come in for special permits and the like. But it wasn't taken up or followed up. I mean,
Food for another day.
We can refile it. Let's see.
so that was item 10. Item 14, Counselor Alexander, was about ordinance section 10, add definition of service, update term of use, shooting gallery, or drop all references, and update the fee.
Abbreviated readings, Madam Chair.
Right. Item 15, require, an ordinance be adopted requiring owners of stores utilizing shopping carts to retrieve the carts. Item 16, that the sewer use charge be amended to replace the fixed minimum quarterly rate with a minimum quarterly rate equivalent to 2,000 gallon rate. Item 17, that the council create a position of inspector of licenses with appropriate duties, etc. This is an unnumbered order immediately following 17. Let's call it 17A for purposes of record keeping. That ordinance section 14-1 be altered to change the licensing authority for commercial animal establishment from the city clerk's office to the license commission. 18, that chapter 30 be reviewed for utility and effectiveness, and that said commission either be constituted by appropriate appointments or stricken. Item 19, that section 98-256 be reviewed for relevance, and that either board members be appointed in accordance with the ordinance or meet to provide advice to the city on ambulance services. Item 20, that the section Appendix A zoning 4.8.2 home occupation by special permit be amended to replace the city council by the planning board as the permit issuing authority. Item 21, that 70-31 through 70-33 be moved to chapter 2, and that chapter 70 then be stricken. 22, that chapter 14 be reviewed in its entirety, dividing it into sections, etc. Item 23, that chapter 22, article 3, fortune tellers be amended to replace permit issuance by the police department with issuance by the license commission. Item 24, that each of the 20 sections of chapter 54 be reviewed and moved to a more appropriate location, and that 54 then be stricken. Item 25, that these 3 chapters, wetlands, vegetarian protection, be combined in a single section. 26, that chapter 62 be reviewed for streamlining, inclusion, revision. And requirement of police-issued permit with a license commission permit. That's relative to peddler's license. Item 27, that, and just as a point of information, Kara has provided us with information on licenses pertaining to bowling alleys and shooting galleries and fortune tellers. So if people have future interest in them, there is some background work that's been done on them. So item 23, the order that ordinance section 10-51 billiard be changed to require a license issued by the license commission rather than the city council. 28, that the director of the Department of Municipal Parking, working with the advice of the Parking Advisory Board, be granted the authority to set regular and special rates for all city parking facilities. Item 29, that Chapter 22, Section 22-71 auction licenses be amended to replace issuance by the City Council with issuance by the License Commission. Item 31, that the DPW begin a test of yellow curbing rather than no parking signs in a section of downtown to determine if such markings can be used in place of. Item 32, that the City Council consider adopting an ordinance that prohibits mobile vendors from selling toy guns. Item 34, that the Ordinance Committee consider various updates to zoning, boarding houses, and related information in zoning definitions to make them consistent with state law. 35, order that the City of Holyoke amends Chapter 30B of its Code of Ordinances to provide for the public procurement of banking services. Item 37, that the City of Holyoke amend Chapter 30B of its Code of Ordinances to provide for the public procurement of outside legal counsel. And finally, item 39, that an ordinance be created stating that all financial transfers, including intra-departmental transfers from personnel to personnel, expense to expense, shall require City Council approval.
On the motion?
Is there a motion?
Motion to give leave to withdraw for all the above?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to take up 33?
Item 33, filed by Counselor Shatnoff. Order that the city install a do not block driveway sign at the entrance of Dino's Restaurant on Homestead Avenue. The congestion from traffic makes it difficult for customers to get in and out of the parking lot. Counselor Shatnoff?
Thank you. I believe we took this up, we talked about it at some point.
We did.
We did. He doesn't want lines in the road. It's not like that. There's a sign in the entrance to Mrs. Mitchell's, Manny's, all that. Says, do not block driveway. All Dino's is asking is to have one in his driveway. That's all he's asking for. Is it really gonna stop the congestion? Probably not, but that's what he's asking for, just a sign like there is on the other
So
side
he
of the
does-
road.
Okay, so
Oh, okay, are they gonna put the white,
No, no,
like
no,
hash
just as,
marks in the street?
they,
No.
it took me 3 years to get them to come in front of the fire station.
Okay,
no, it's just a sign like the other entrance to the other plaza has. That's all he's asking for.
motion to be adopted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I didn't know they backed up on that
Progress, Dave,
sign,
progress.
but maybe they do. I've never seen it
Forward.
backed up there, but.
I was out there one day with him talking.
Motion
about
to take up
Okay.
item number
Okay.
36.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 36, filed by Counselor Soto, that the City of Holyoke amends Chapter 30B of its Code of Ordinances to provide for the public procurement of ambulance service. So, if my understanding is correct, this would cause it to go into a bid process?
Yep.
Did you want to speak on behalf of the order, Counselor Bartley?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. So, right now, it's I believe this is either pending or about to, a contract, I think we're coming down to the wire with AMR. Madam Chair, can we just get clarification from legal on that,
Oh, okay. Kara, do you,
under suspension of the rules?
Contract with AMR has already expired. The intent and what's in process now is to go out to bid for a new contract.
Oh, great, so
Okay.
we'll just make this law then.
And that the only concern, and I think the reason behind why it's exempt from 30B is, the contract with AMR is over. They're essentially holding over. If they said tomorrow that they are done and not going to provide ambulance service in the city, we obviously need to be able to obtain a new provider immediately. And so I think that's probably the basis for the exemption from 30B in a situation like that. It's something you have to have 24/7. The plan is to go out to bid. I don't necessarily think anybody would have any objection to an ordinance as long as built in there is some kind of emergency provisions that in the event, for whatever reason, there's no provider, that, some kind of a short-term at least
Yeah.
contract can be
Seems
entered into.
reasonable.
Because,
Well, you need to put that in a law, or is that in a contract with, I mean, if the vendor goes out of business, if
well, yeah, I mean, that could be another reason the vendor
goes out of business, then, I mean, in.
Maybe the mayor's empowered to make a 30-day or 60-day appointment of
Right.
an ambulance service until the process, because you need an ambulance service while
Okay, in the
they're
event.
going through the process.
In the event that there's a gap in coverage.
Yeah,
Right,
That
you
the
need
mayor,
to be
that the
able to
mayor,
procure.
that the mayor is empowered to
make a 60-day appointment.
grant, well, to grant a necessary contract up to a one-year period to allow the procurement of a replacement, or how,
Want to even go a year on a temporary?
6 months? I mean,
Yeah.
you need more than 30 days to get
Okay,
that turned
all right,
around.
6 months then. So maybe, Kara, if you could draft something, and then we take it up at the next
I mean,
meeting.
6 months, Kara, is enough for procurement. I think 6 months is reasonable. So the mayor's up to allow, it's 180 days, 6 months, however you write it. So,
and I would just like to comment that I'm always in favor of competitive bids, because I think it makes for healthier, pricing, hopefully, for the city. But I do have to say that I deal with AMR a lot, and they're a good company. I will say that. So,
yeah, a lot of good companies.
but I think their
So you're going to
service has
create
been
the
good,
same
so-
process, which is the mayor picks and then we confirm? That's the broker record rule. What
Mayor
do you-
picks, we confirm.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Do you need anything more from us, Kara?
I mean, as long
Would we,
Well, I guess the concern is if we don't have a council confirmation, then basically, how does that really materially make it different than right now? Because then, right now, the mayor has exclusive sole source contracting over this, right? I assume that's the concern, right?
but we're saying it would be public.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I see. Do you feel that that's enough
See,
of a
I'm-
transparency just by having the public bid? Or do you want to make,
I do.
okay, then,
I
then
mean-
no council just the public
Yeah.
bid?
Public bid.
Yeah,
Okay.
competitive bid.
Okay, very good.
So, do you need a motion from us to adopt and request you to put this in legal form
I'd like a draft back,
to look at first?
say in
Okay,
a
so-
couple weeks, or,
I would, yes.
Okay.
yeah, 2
Okay.
weeks.
So we'll table.
So then a motion to table.
Table,
Second.
second.
So table for legal form. All right,
Madam Chair?
yes,
So if we, so just, so that will take a couple weeks for Kara. I think I had Kara, yeah, okay, so maybe a couple weeks for that, couple, 4 weeks, whatever, and then,
We're
and
just,
then 99 Carlton Street, so there's a.
oh, we're just,
what was the
we're cooking
second
with
one
gas
that
now.
you just said?
Pawn shop,
Oh, the photos and
Beautiful,
the,
bring it.
yeah, bring it on.
oh,
Boom,
oh,
boom, bring it
before
on.
I
Boom,
forget,
progress.
At the last city council meeting, because we had met so close to the council meeting, you and Lem had not had time to get back to us on the Kmart Plaza left-hand turn. But from the committee point of view, we've already adopted it, so we're just waiting for legal and, I know this one in my mind, but I'm not sure what the other one is. Oh, okay. So if you do get those back to Ryan, then they could go on the next agenda. I just don't want to lose track of, but one I have, so,
Thank you, thank you. Madam Chair,
okay.
appreciate it.
Well, this, I think, is a
Just
common sense
Quick
one.
question, other than all of our ordinance changes and stuff, which are gonna be, we're gonna be firing these out fast and furious, do we have anything like any zone change applications out there, or do we have any, what's anything out there in the hopper right now
Yes.
that's non-ordinances?
There are 4 things.
Believe it.
There are 2 public hearings that were continued from sometime in 2015 to February 9th.
What was the topic?
Shopping center,
Oh,
IGBH, right, Kara? Something about. There's still 2 more that were not shopping center itself, because those are, they exceeded the time limit, but there were 2 other ones that related in a different way, but somehow they were in a separate category. But anyway, those, my understanding is, and I'll look in the jacket after, just to be sure. My understanding is there are 2 that were continued that are coming up on the 9th, and I asked for Ryan, and he did coordinate and advertise on the zone change, eliminating the exemption around parking,
for the hospital thing?
yes.
Beautiful.
And to amend the ordinances on solar in the RA. Those will be also on the agenda for February 9th.
Wonderful.
Those are the only, oh, the zone change petition from RA and BL to maybe IG or maybe BG, that's coming up on the 9th.
And what's that for?
That's for Lower Westfield Road.
What do you mean? Oh,
that I know
oh,
of.
there's some residents there that are trying to change
No,
something?
no, the owner of the shop that has been closed for a number of years,
Oh, is this that thing that they were talking about, maybe putting a hotel there or something?
right?
Okay.
And then next to it, he owns the house.
Got it.
He wants to change both of those properties
So
to
he'll be-
something else,
He'll be coming to see us at some point.
but he hasn't clarified. He's coming on the 9th. That's a continuation to the 9th.
Okay.
Yes, Counselor Bartley?
I think we got things under control.
Well, just for the Ward 6 counselors' edification, that we will at some point soon hear from Lynch School. I would suspect that'll be coming in for a zone change application. So So we'll have a discussion about that. And one other item, if I may, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Is that the planning board tonight, for this, closes public hearing for the YMCA parking lot, and they will take final action on that decision for a special permit at next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And the indications are it looks positive.
Does that then go to DGNR?
No, it comes to us.
No, that's
At the
it.
council.
No, that's it. Special permit is.
Oh, right.
Special permit is, yeah, that was the night, Mr. President, I wasn't able to make a prior ordinance meeting, and we had many motions that are on the floor that night, if you recall, about 10 amendments. So we were able to cure about 6 of them, but nevertheless,
Planning board has the authority to give a special permit for parking?
in fact, they do. In fact, you voted for it. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, you did. But nevertheless, it looks.
Progress is very fast.
You're getting a lot more liberal in your old age, but you know, all's well that ends well, as Shakespeare said. So hopefully we will we'll see it. But I thought that we should all know, and who's ever watching at home should be aware. So I was at the planning tonight. So next Tuesday, 5 o'clock, the planning board, they've done a great job, due diligence. They've had two days of public hearing, and they'll have a special meeting next Tuesday at 5 for final action.
Okay.
One way or the other.
And just by way of information, there have been some other orders recently filed that do come under zoning. But what I'm going to try to do is keep those together, so the advertising and the hearings will be, it's gonna be hard but I'm gonna try to get those in the next queue. I still have to meet with the planning folks on the calendar. But right now, I just added 2 onto the already existing calendar. So I'll touch base with them, because the clock starts ticking when the order is filed, correct?
Yeah, and technically it's when it goes.
Which is usually the next day, right? So then we have 65 days to either do something, or if the time runs out, it has to start over, which is why you saw a couple late refiles on things. It runs out quick. Thank you. Any other questions or anything? I think we got everything on the agenda.
Yeah, this looks great. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, folks. Now,